ask this in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So I'm going to take my cue from this deacon, which is kind of the normal thing. I am going to rest my leg, if you don't mind. Actually, wrong leg. Let's do this. That's a little bit better. Okay, very good. Okay, you ready to start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So once again, thanks to all of you, and we're recording this because we want to have a chance for any future members that come in to have an orientation. I'm going to be meeting and also do the same thing for some of our altar servers. I just wanted to be able to talk about the purpose and the ministry, the goals and objectives of the choir, and be able to let you know how incredibly important your ministry has been and is in the church. You know, the altar and the choir form two hands together to be able to do the work of the worship of God. And for us as Orthodox, as we believe, we pray. As we pray, we believe. Remember in Russia when they tried to destroy the church, they prevented the church from doing everything except for what they could do in the four walls of the church. They didn't stop the sacraments. They let the church stay open and allowed people to live. They didn't stop the sacraments. They didn't stop the worship. That was a big mistake. If they would have attacked those things and let the church do everything else, the church would have died out and ceased to exist. But the worship is the core of our being and what we do. And I have to tell you how essential the choir is in that worship, not only theologically, but just practically. And also, I'll tell you in just who we are, St. Anthony's, and why we've been able to get here to where we are. As you know, the clergy, if you look at the books of the service books of the church, from the earliest copies that we can find, there are two basic categories of listing to the people who's doing the service. You'll have those that will be clergy. You'll have episkopos, which means bishop. You have icharephs, which will mean priest, okay, right? You have diakon, easy, that's deacon, okay. All right, those are the three ones that generally are noted that's there. And guess what the response is listed in the books, those ancient books? People. Laos. Laos, it's the people. Doesn't say choir, doesn't say chanters, doesn't say reader. Okay, sorry, reader Christian, doesn't say it. And Benjamin just became a reader this morning. We prayed for him today, so we're very thankful. And John. So those were early orders of the church, but in the books, it doesn't, early on in the books, it was very clear. You had the clergy who lead out with the prayers, but guess who did the actual prayer? It was the people. So the deacon is leading, in peace, let us pray to the Lord. He's telling us as people what we need to do, and then the people respond with the actual prayer, which is, Lord, have mercy. Okay, so we have to understand that. So the choir, the readers, the chanters, they are helping the people lead in the worship. And that's the brilliance I really appreciated with this community when I came down here 13 years ago. That it was what an Orthodox church really ideally strives to be. That is active worship, where you have the people of God being encouraged to participate, body, soul, and spirit in the worship. And what's so beautiful, and I could tell this from when I was at home as well too, I could hear this again today, is that I'm so happy for the choir, the chanters, and the readers that are here doing their part. But because you do your part so well, I hear people out here singing and joining along with it. Because the real tragedy that you have in some of the Orthodox churches, which is kind of sad, is when there is the idea that it's a liturgical opera between the choir and the altar, and nobody else has any part. That became a medieval corruption in which the people came to hear the Mass. Okay, that's not within the ethos, theology, and it should never be the practice of the Orthodox Church, although in reality in some places it's become that. So I'm very, very thankful for the commitment of this parish that I inherited 13 years ago, and that commitment is still strong to have active worship, of which your ministry for the choir is huge here at St. Anthony's. And I would also say that's probably part of the reason why this church has grown so much, because the worship has been, number one, in English, and number two, it's absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. And part of it also means that we have borrowed from Metropolitan Philip of blessed memories, his understanding of wanting to have worship that lifted people up to God collectively and drew their attention to actually being before the throne of God. What we believe happens in the liturgy, we actually experience that. We've kind of left our place here, and we set aside all earthly care to the point that we're able to attend to the ongoing worship before the throne of God. And I think that's the experience for a lot of people. So what we want to continue to do in our work and ministry as choir to keep on moving in that direction. So when we understand in terms of what the purpose and the ministry of the choir is that we have to understand that I can do some services without the choir. It's not ideal. I can do paraklesis. I really like for more of you to come to paraklesis, to learn the paraklesis and be able to say it together. What is really glorious is when everybody learns how to chant it. I know it's not easy because we don't have the notes to it, but it's well worth being able to learn to do. And there are also some services, you know, that you can do without me, a priest. You can do without a reader even. You can do without a deacon. They're meant to be lay services. So within the Orthodox Church, we've developed the hours, compline, that those were meant to be lay services where we didn't necessarily have clergy to be able to collectively come and pray together. There are some of those services, as Matins and Vespers, when you don't have a priest, you can do as a reader service. And it doesn't mean necessarily we have Reader Christian, Reader John doing that. If we have them, that's great. We can even have a deacon do it, but we have to change them a little bit. But I hope you know the most important service that we do in the church, and it's not meant to be a quiz or a test. What do you suppose the most important service that we do is in the church? Yes, the liturgy, the divine liturgy. Do you know I cannot do that divine liturgy without you? If on a Sunday morning, Reader Christian, Reader John, myself, Father Nathan, Deacon Tom, and all the subdeacons showed up here for church, and we did not have one single member of the laos, the laity, we would be forced to do a typical service with communion. We could not do divine liturgy because we have to have the people of God there. Both parts of the church, those who are set apart at the altar, but all of us have been set apart by the royal priesthood of Christ at our baptism and chrismation. And for the laos, their role is to say the Lord of Mercies, the Amens, and whatever hymns that's appointed to them. And especially, this is really, really true. In some churches, this became a medieval corruption in the church, is to actually block the people out of some of those things that are there, to the point when we do, especially the epiclesis. Even in the liturgicon, here's where and Bishop Basil will admit this, it's a medieval corruption of our practice in the liturgicon to have the deacons say the amens at the epiclesis. When the prayer, when we call for the Holy Spirit to come down upon us and these gifts, here spread forth and make this body, and make this bread, and make this wine, those are only for the people of God, the laos, that's the choir, chanters, readers, to be able to lead the people in saying amen. If we don't have you guys doing those, I cannot do a liturgy. We have to understand that. That makes it very, very different from anything that took place in the West. So your role is really, really critical. Something I just want to share with Bishop Basil had said, this just a few words. He says, there are a few ministries of the church that require the devotion, dedication that church singing does. You who lead singing, as well as you who follow the leader, are precious gifts to your parishes. You are as important to the parish as the holy table itself, I'd say the altar. And there can be no liturgy without holy table. There can be no liturgy without you. This is not to compliment you or increase your pride, but rather put a little fear and awe in you, and so that you know that what your responsibilities are. Church singing is not a hobby. Being a choir director is not something one does for personal fulfillment. It's first and foremost a duty and a service to God of those who have musical talents. And so he goes on to talk about how awesome and how important this is. So as we move forward, and this, I'm really happy to be able to do this. I've had some choir changes in the past from when I first came down here, and Valerie was leading the choir. And then when she left, I didn't have a chance really to sit with the choir and talk about it when Reader Vlad took over, and then when Nazo took over. So now at this point, this is kind of a little late in things in the transition, but I want to have a chance to finally do things proper and right. So thank you for your attention here. And I promise I will make this very quick because we already got a long sermon anyway. Okay, so important things to know that three goals that we have to have, and well, more than three, but some goals we have to have for our worship. Number one, it has to be intelligible. Absolutely has to be intelligible. Right? What does St. Paul say in 1 Corinthians? He says, if I say a few words in tongues and nobody can interpret, what does it profit anybody? I might as well be saying 1,000 words that there's no benefit to anyone. So just because we do things in English does not mean that we are intelligible, okay? We have to be careful in our elocution, or in terms of how we say things. But yes. So yeah, we want, so it's very important in terms of how we do that. So we're thankful, number one, that's why this church has a commitment of doing things in English. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to learn a few Kyrie eleison, Yarabodham, Gospodi pomilui. Just giving you a heads up. The new book for the liturgy, which will be following exactly the children's book that's there, following exactly what we have with the Liturgicon, will have everything in it, and we're going to be restoring the fervent ectenia that should be done right after the homily. And that's where we do the triple Lord of Mercies, and we'll be doing them in all the different languages like we've been doing it for years here for the youth vespers and like what we do at camp. And the Trisagin, it wouldn't hurt for us from time to time to alternate between Holy God, Holy Mighty, Holy Immortal, especially as we're getting ready for the bishop to come. Just so we're familiar with the so people don't get too shocked, because when he does come, he's going to use some different languages. We don't do that all the time. It's a token. I mean, for the hymns that we're only going to hear once, we wouldn't ever have them not in English because we want our people to understand them. But the key thing is, so number one, English is, of course, primarily what we're going to do, but we're going to learn a little bit more of a few of the languages that will help us out that we already know, okay? Most of you already know. Your kids always know them because they've been up at camp. They do all the different languages. And it's a token nod to the diversity of the people we have that are here. The second thing is that we also want to make sure that the importance is, of course, upon the words. The beauty of the music is wonderful. That is part of the elevation. But if we don't understand what's being said, then, that's a problem. And so that's why it's really critical to follow the choir director, trying to be very careful in terms of how we say things. That's why I know you guys have practiced years before of even reading through some of the things. When you go through, it helps in terms of picking up the words. I can tell you there's some times that I don't have a thing with me and I can understand everything that's being said. There are also some times when we've had to put some of the things back in there because we haven't been able to hear everything that's there. So we want to make sure that we try to maybe slow down a little bit if we need to, project the voice if it needs to be a little bit. If we're using the microphone, if you're hearing it booming out over the speakers, back off or drop the level of strength in the voice. If you can't hear yourself over the speakers, you maybe need to step forward and elevate a little bit. We're trying to keep it so that also when we go from one reader to reader, chanter to chanter, that when we're doing those various parts, it becomes more of a seamless whole that continues. Because the nice thing is we're trying to, like Metropolitan Philip said, raise people up into heaven in the worship. It's when there sometimes is a huge gap or things that's very startling that people get pulled back down. And so we're trying to avoid those distractions as much as possible. That leads to the other part, is that we're trying to improve and work on the symphonia, right, and harmonia between the choir and the altar. So that Anastasia is going to be helping, working with some of the clergy, so that in setting pitches for them, because here's the thing. Most of our clergy can match the pitch, not everybody can. But what happens is, so that's why the choir, thank you guys for being very gracious to move to the place. We have Archdeacon George Shisham, sweetheart of a man. years of service, but he only has one key that he knows to sing it in. The choir used to always have to play off what he did when he was singing. But most of our clergy can be able to adjust it. She's going to be helping that to set pitches for the clergy and working on that and practicing that, so that when it comes with the choir, it becomes even more seamless as possible.
Especially for like, when you have your bigger services, like our consecration, which we'll be having in June. You know, the joke when I was at the consecration for St. Andrew's in 2009, we shouldn't have been talking during the liturgy, but we were anyway. And the joke was they had 50 different priests there. 50
Oh, yeah.
priests at that altar. And someone leaned into me and she says, 50 different priests, 50 different pitches. And I responded to her, 50 different priests, 52 different pitches. So when you have more and more clergy, there's a greater and greater likelihood that not every person who's going to be doing a petition is going to be able to match the choir's pitch. And sometimes there's wiggle room and we can jump up to a G if we're supposed to be an F. And sometimes there's really not wiggle room. So it'll be helpful to have that practice.
Thank you. So we also, part of the thing that, so as we try to have this seamless going back and forth between the altar and the choir, we're trying to keep pace the same, keep volume the same if we can, especially if one person takes over with another person. It really helps it be more seamless and less of a distraction, and keep the pitch, which is a big, big help. The other thing is that because of the uniqueness of the situation, we are so blessed, but sometimes cursed at the same time. We inherited this building, this floor plan, which we expanded over here, you know, thanks to Jeanette and Dr. Julie telling us we could put in this side aisle. But we didn't know that we were going to tear down this whole building. If we were going to tear down this whole building, except for this wall and a little bit of the choir wall, I would have asked to push another story up, which could have left for a choir loft, and then it would have been better, but that would have been probably another year's worth of planning, stuck in the old church, and maybe another $1 million. I don't know how much more it would have been. So I'm thankful to do what we did. But when we inherited this, there was a band choir space that was over here. Normally, in most Orthodox churches, the ancient Orthodox churches, the practice was to have the kleros on both sides. The protos, the first, would be over here. The defteros, the second, would be over here. But because of the uniqueness of the situation we had, it was a remodel, we ended up using this space that was here. Now, that's a good thing, because that puts you closer to the altar, and I think that helps facilitate our communication and our work together. It becomes also problematic, though, because if you're back in a choir loft, you wouldn't be noticeable to anybody, right? Because everybody, all of us are facing this way. Most of the people are praying because we face towards the east, looking for the second coming of Christ. That's why. And so you guys are kind of up there. Now, that also becomes, can be a struggle, because sometimes the choir can get a little rowdy. I won't mention about certain churches but I knew certain churches where people who came into the Orthodox Church, went up to the choir because they had a gift for singing, they had to leave because they were so scandalized at how much talking and that they couldn't pray. They couldn't pray in the choir. Okay, now that we are so blessed. We don't have that issue or problem. What does happen, though, is does put us right up here front and center from everybody, so that because the choir director is usually facing here, you guys are facing out because we need your voices projecting. It really helps with what acoustics we have in the church, but at the same time, what ends up happening is that means that the line of sight you have is going to be for a lot that's going on here. That is a really temptation for distraction. So as a priest, I'm going to always ask you, please avoid all temptation. Strive to not be tempted, especially to be distracted. And so a key thing I'm asking you guys to be able to do is focus, focus, focus. Focus on the choir director is the first thing I think I want you to do. Second thing I want you to do is focus on the choir director. The third thing I want you to do is focus on the choir director. You get it, right? 3 times for the Trinity. It's hard because I know people may come in, or a child may cry, or somebody may drop a book or something. My wife, doing the epistle for her sister's wedding, did a beautiful job for it, but she was so nervous that the metal epistle book. She dropped it right at the end. It's in the video. You can hear the clunk. You can hear the clunk. Okay. So, but what I want you to do is, if there's a clunk now, if there's somebody comes with a gun shooting, that's a different thing. All right, that's a different story. But generally, what I'm going to ask you guys to do is just to focus there. I can tell you, because in the altar, I'm trying to do the very same thing. When I'm in the altar, and I hear some of the things that are going on, I could turn around and do that, but that'd be a distraction to everybody in the altar. All right, so that's why, if you hear or see things, just be focused here. And in fact, what I encourage you to do, this is what I have to do when I get to sing in the choir for the PLCs, which I really love to do. I have to raise up the music stand, because when I was in choir, I have to have it up to the height so that I can see both the music and the choir director. So if you need to adjust it on your stand with the person you're sitting with, please try to do that, because we don't want to be our head so much in the music that you can't see what the choir director is. And also the point, you're not watching the music, that you go off and do something else, like I sometimes do at the altar. So,
and the reality is, like, too, we have some new faces here, I'm noticing, but we also have a lot of people who are here who know the music. Like, you all know the Troparion for St. Anthony. You all know most of the holy gods that we have. It's highly unlikely that I'm going to pull one out that you've never seen before without going over that with you first, right? So the reality is, for the most part, unless maybe I'm asking an alto to sing soprano or a tenor to sing bass or something like that, you know your part. So it's there as a crutch, it's there to help you, and you should look at it if you're not sure of it. But if you've been singing it for a little while, it doesn't hurt to look at me.
And I'm amazed.
I'll tell you how to interpret it.
Yeah, that's a key thing, because some of my pieces that I like, it's amazing how the conductor can really change the interpretation of some of the music in terms of how it goes. I also am amazed when I watch some of these choirs that do some of this and they do it without music. Now, some of those are professional choirs. They're paid to do that. I remember watching an amazing Christmas story, which I've never seen but once. It was about a church in the Bay Area of California was trying to do a Christmas program. They're trying to do Handel's Messiah. And at one point, the choir director got frustrated with the choir and started screaming at them. And the pastor was there. He was dressed like a priest, so it was kind of a high church. I don't know if it was Episcopal or what it was. It was a great movie. Michael Landon, who played the mother in Walton's, was one of the key figures there. And it would be neat for a choir gathering together to actually watch it sometime. But this choir director just loses it on them and says, "You're all amateurs," and then got up and left and abandoned the choir. So we were frustrated. And so what was nice is the pastor stepped in, and the pastor stepped in. He says, "Yeah, that's right. You are amateurs. Because if you were professionals, you'd get paid for doing this. You don't get paid anything this because you do this out of the love of God."
Exactly, and that's
the
where
love of people.
comes from. Amateur comes from amare, which means to love.
Yeah.
You do it for the love of it, not because you're paid to do it.
Yeah, and so I appreciate your love of Christ and His church, your love of the services, your love of our people, because that love is poured out in your ministry and your service that you do for us. So I think that as we look at that going forward, a couple things that I'm just asking for the choir to do, okay? Number one, get back and hone up some of our beautiful music. We have a beautiful repertoire of music. There's some stuff that may be dropped out of practice that we might be pulling out and relearning as well, too. That's what's made St. Anthony's so special, is because it's just not all Byzantine. It's not all Russian. We've got some Romanian, we've got some Armenian, we've got some Bulgarian. We've got a mixture of stuff we pulled in. Like Metropolitan Philip said, he didn't care what tradition it came from as long as the music itself was canonical and it sounded beautiful. And I think that there's a beauty for the worship that's here, and it respects the multiplicity of God's beautiful creation in the Orthodox world for that. And especially at Pascha, we see that when you guys learn and sing it in Japanese and you sing it in Dutch. You know, we're going to have to work on Eritrean, guys, I'm sorry. Although that's a different mold and sound. I don't know if we'd be able to do that one. Okay, that's a hard one. But
Yes.
the Georgian, beautiful. We're going to relearn some of the old stuff that we have before. For some of you new here with the choir, it's going to be maybe new to you. Also, they're going to be, like I said, we're adding on the fervent ectinia, which we normally do during Great Vespers every single time, and we do it quietly at the altar at the end of Oathros, you don't get to hear the rest of Oathros because Father Nathan and I finish it up there. But what's beautiful about having that in the liturgy, that's praying for all the people on our prayer list. You realize that we get to put those people, the power of that, putting it back into liturgy, magnifies the grace and the power for them for the prayer. So we're really thankful to be able to have to do that. And by the way, that's only going to add another 5 minutes onto our liturgy time. I'll maybe have to drop it from the sermon. Okay. And then, promises. Okay. And then, of course, here's the thing. We have the stuff for the consecration to go through. We have some new stuff that will be new to us. One is Nazo's. How many of you guys got Nazo's disc? Nazo's music, right? Be renewed, O New Jerusalem. That's going to be hard. That's a beautiful choral piece. But I'd really like, that's specifically for consecration. It is. If you listen to that, they're talking about making us new, but also this place new. It already exists, but we're renewing it. It's gorgeous theology, a great hymn. So that's one we're trying to be able to learn, not only for the procession out there, because I want to sneak it in for when the bishop goes and he anoints all four corners here, because I think it would sound glorious in here as well, too. We also have a hierarchical, we have to figure out how we're going to do the doxology that matches the bishop. So we're trying to figure out a way in which we could be able to do that, either with one choir or a chanter or a set of chanters, or if the whole choir can be able to do it. But we really want to do something that's going to be seamless. This is St. Joseph's church. This is his home. He really is our main, that's why when we say blessed master, it's not about me. It's remembering that he should be here at all the services, doing all the sacraments and the services for us, and he's not. So when we welcome him to his home, we want him to feel welcome. We don't want him to be like a stranger. You know, that he's odd man out because he doesn't know how to be able to sing the doxology with us because we do it so differently. Now that doesn't mean we're going to change how we do the doxology. The way we do doxology is the way we do the doxology through most of the year. But for that Sunday, we want to be able to do it in a way that can seamlessly match him, kind of like we did at the Parish Life Conference. Hopefully maybe with a set of chanters or a small group, or I don't know if the choir can be able to do that. That may not be possible. That may be too hard to do. Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that we're going to be doing for the consecration that isn't consecration specific is stuff that's done at Parish Life Conferences, but also I know a lot of people here were involved in that chanting group. There are going to be some hymns from Matin services. For some of those, like the intercession hymns, they do them a little bit differently. They do them in Byzantine too, as opposed to four-part. Hymns like those, I'm planning on working in like during Lenten seasons when things are supposed to be more minor anyway, and we'll learn those as we go, but there are going to be bigger ones, like how are we going to do the four-part,
yeah.
the four-part Trisagion?
Yeah, I really would like that. That's the one thing, in the all the years I've been down here, we haven't been able to match St. Joseph with a Trisagion hymn, and it's not been in our repertoire, and this is a real push-out for us. That's why I would sacrifice the doxology, have a team of chanters be able to do that. I really want when he does, Holy God. Oh, I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. He's going to sing it in Arabic. He's going to sing it in Greek. You know, probably. We're going to respond in English. It would be great to you know, he'll do it in English as well too. But it really would be so sweet for us to be able to do that because that's how he knows how to sing it. And then once again, we're trying to accommodate him, not force him to change. I mean, he goes from church to church to church, and believe it or not, he does deal with a lot of differences, and that's okay, because that's part of what we are as Orthodox communities. Not every place does everything the same way, and that's fine. But at least in these couple areas, because this is one of the most special events we'll ever have for a church. Do you know we have whole feasts? The reason why they're on the calendar is because we maybe didn't know the actual feast day of the person, but a church was dedicated, it was consecrated on that date. So that's why that feast is on that calendar that way. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say, which is enough. I'm sorry I took a lot of time, but I just wanted to thank you so much for listening to this, and then we might have a few questions afterwards, but I want Anastasia to be able to say her 2 bits.
It's been a little bit. Hi, everyone. Hi. This is definitely on. So I'm seeing some new faces here. I know a lot of people here are familiar. Welcome, welcome. And I just wanted to go over, because there are some people who have approached me who have asked me, I want to be in the choir. What are your requirements? And it's been a little while, I think, since we've actually had a set
rubric for what that means. I know when Vlad was here, I can't speak to Valerie, I wasn't in the choir back then. When Vlad was here, you had to have an audition. And I remember I never actually had an audition because I was worried I would fail. And little story time. I learned all of the hymns from the pew because I was listening, just singing along. And I remember one Sunday, I look up and Vlad's like this. I was 10. I was like, what? He looks at me and he goes.
Yeah.
And I went to the choir area, and I've been there for the past 12 years. I haven't left. I know that we need to have some kind of plan for initiating people into the choir. It's an important ministry, and all other ministries have that kind of coordination. So I'm just going to go over a few of the things that we will be asking for if you're interested in joining a few of our requirements as blessed by Father. The first one is we are asking that you be at least 12 years old. And I don't think that's going to be a problem with most of the people here. As someone who joined the choir at 10, it's possible to make exceptions for those kinds of things, but I got vocal nodules because I did not know how to sing properly. And technically your voice isn't even properly trained until, it's not trainable until you're 16.
Yeah.
So I'm saying 12 as a means of compromise for people, but really that will be for people to be eased into things. I don't want to put you on a part and then have you carry everything. That was why I couldn't sing for 2 years. And we don't want that to happen to other people, especially now that I know what to look for. It's very preventable, and I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. The second thing is we're asking that people be a member at St. Anthony's for at least a year. And member doesn't mean you're giving money for a year. It means you've filled out a membership form. We have record of you saying, this is my home church. And that can mean you've transferred from another Orthodox church, but maybe you've been Orthodox for longer than a year. Or it can mean you've been Orthodox for a year at St. Anthony's. But we want to make sure that you have, this is your home base, because the choir, you're here almost every Sunday, if not every Sunday. You're leading things. We are leaders. We're a group of leaders leading the people in the magnification and worship of God. Like, that's a very important job. And what that means is that we have to be familiar with what we're doing, what we're saying, what our job is. We have to be immersed in it. And the best way to do that is to be here and have the opportunity to listen, but to have this as a foundation. Those are the main things, I would say, more than anything. I had a few things, other things I talked to you about. I'm forgetting what they are now. Matching pitch is another thing. Everyone has a different range. Some people can sing higher, some people can sing lower than I can. It's not about how high or how low you can sing. If I were to give you a note, like if you're interested in joining, if you're new, I'll probably pull you aside. We'll just chat for a little bit about it. I'll ask you to sing and match my pitch. If you're able to do that, congrats. It's, you're going to need to be able to match my pitch when I pitch them here. It's important. And I know that our deacons, our subdeacons, our clergy might not always be able to do that. It's our job to be able to match pitch because we need to sing as a cohesive group as much as possible.
And that's why one of the things also too is that when you have that situation where the clergy can't adjust down to it and the choir is trying to reset, but the reason why I'm trying to work with the clergy is because the choir, between the sopranos and the basses, there's only so much leeway you guys can go. Really, there's only so much leeway. That's why we're going to be working on trying to get the clergy to bring themselves to conformity to where the choir is at, rather than the other way around. But I really appreciate your grace in helping to make up for that. But sometimes that pushes you guys in the stratosphere or down in the basement. And that's not good for your voices either.
No, and I've been at Parish Life conferences where, I don't know, Christian, if you remember this, we had one priest who, I don't remember what note he was singing on, but it wasn't anywhere within the chord. We were trying to sing an F major chord. It wasn't anywhere that could fit there. Every single Lord Have Mercy had to be repitched in F major for a hierarchical divine liturgy. By like the fourth time in, Marina was like rolling her eyes while she was doing it. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. It's not always avoidable. And for things like a consecration, the priests that are going to come are the priests that are going to come, and we're happy to have them with us. Sayedna might not be able to. Maybe it's too high for him. We'll see what happens, you know? We're gonna roll with it as much as we possibly can. But matching pitch, matching each other's pitch, matching the pitch I give you for your part, that's your job. We'll see what we can do about the clergy. We're gonna try as best as we can. Another thing that's super important is the ability to work as a team. We're a group, you know? It's sometimes in some churches, if you have a group of chanters, maybe sometimes you'll have people doing solos, but I think Father John al-Masih even said, even in, you know, Byzantium, they had choirs of Byzantine chanters. It wasn't just one person. You had, can you imagine, like 40 people on one side, more than that, 40 people on the other side, back and forth in Byzantine notation, and it gets crazier if you try to do it in Arabic because you have to read it backwards. It's nuts. But the point is, there's still coordination there. There has to be, because we're not doing it by ourselves. It's not just supposed to be me as the main soprano, right? I'm the director, I'm leading it. But it's all of us working as a team. And so we need people who are going to be able to have that team spirit because we're in a whole group of people. And then the last thing would just be a respect and obedience for authority. Those are really the main things that we're looking for. I also would say it's important that you be here as much as you possibly can. I'm quite literally preaching to the choir, and that most of you are already here every Sunday. So that's not that much of a concern, but it's still an important thing to state. I know we have some people here who, you know, are more dependent on family schedules. Like I can stay home now on vacations if they want to go somewhere. I'm getting old, but you know, we have some younger people here. I mean, not that old relatively, right? But think about it this way. This is my last year of college. I graduate really soon. Like, it's weird to think about, right? To say all that, you know, I understand that some people can't drive. Some people, their family schedules will take them here and there, and they can't always be here. Sometimes you'll go on family vacation for several months. It happens. Like, anything you can think of. Like, those circumstances do happen. Just communicate with me. As long as I know what's going on in your life, we're all good. And I can talk with you and we can make exceptions, it's fine.
Because that's the same thing I'm asking for the altar. We really need them as a team to be able to help do what they're doing, especially because we got a lot of young kids that are coming back now at the altar and serving. We need the I'm gonna say older guys, the more mature, experienced guys to be able to help with that part. And so what I'm asking, especially of our clergy, if they can't be there, because I really rely on them. They need, out of just respect to me, they need to communicate. It can be a text, just simply a text that says, because otherwise I might be worried about what's happened, because why aren't they there? Usually, and they know the responsibility of letting me know I can't make it to Vespers because da-da-da, or I can't make it to whatever, because you're taking on this ministry, so it's something we're really depending upon you. And if it really helps for me leading at the altar, Anastasia leading at the choir, if we know, oh, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so won't be there. She especially, it's much harder for her than it is for me, because I can go in and fill in the deacon and the subdeacon's spot if I don't have them.
I can't sing bass.
Yeah.
I've tried.
Yeah, no, and so what happens, if she's got planned for 4-part common chant, and then she has to switch it to Byzantine, she needs to know, it would help to know that in advance.
It's as much as possible. I recognize sometimes,
Yeah.
like, sometimes it happens last minute, you don't know, you know, and things change. But what I do, just so y'all know, every Wednesday is usually when I work on the texts, and that's when I decide, okay, are we doing this in common chant or are we doing this in Byzantine? And some common chant tones are harder than others, so out of, you know, the desire not to try to have us learn it during the service, maybe I'll do it default to Byzantine, but sometimes I have to go and actually structure it in common chant myself. I have to take what's on the Archdiocese set for Byzantine and format it in common chant myself. And I'm happy to do it, but if I don't have to do it, it's nice to know that I don't have to do it. It saves me like 30 minutes every week. It'd be nice to know. Father, did you want to add something to that?
Oh, no, the other thing is, I think also, you're going to talk about practices, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. We're going to reinstitute practices twice a month, second and fourth Saturday, or Sunday. I told myself, don't mess that up. Look what happened. Don't overthink. Moral of the story. Every second and fourth Sunday, we're going to have our practices again. We need to have them consistently. Ideally, it'd be nice to have a practice once a week, But I know that that's difficult to do, especially during the week. I don't know about you guys, but between like school and work, everyone else's work stuff, it's very, very hard. So we're gonna stick with twice a month practices for now, but we need to hold to them. And I think one of the reasons why it's important to be at as many as you can is because I'm not asking that you be able to sight read in order to be a member of our choir. At a lot of other Orthodox churches I go to, most other Orthodox churches I go to, you have to know how to sight read. Part of their audition is, and that's why I never technically auditioned for our choir, because I was worried they were going to pull out a piece of sheet music and ask me to look at a dotted eighth note, and I hate eighth notes. They're awful. Anyway, I didn't know any of that. I learned the music, and then I learned it by ear. And then when I got into the choir, I learned, oh, that's how it goes, right? Because there's what we hear, and then there's what we know, and I learned it backwards. I think anybody can learn this music without needing to know how to read it as a prerequisite. But what that means is it might take you longer to learn it because you're not as used to speaking the language, and rehearsals help fill up that gap. So I'm not requiring that you know how to sight read. If you know how to sight read or you're learning, it will help you, but it's not something that I'm requiring.
So are we done? Any questions?
What other questions do you have for me or him? Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Am I to understand that if someone becomes a member of the choir, that, I'm asking,
Yeah.
is it expected that we're at the services? I mean, for example, some people sing matins and don't come to matins, or do come to liturgy, but it's important for you to know who's going to be at what service.
Yes, yes. And I know.
So you know how to do your part.
Yes, exactly. It's important to know that I just know who's coming. If you can't make it to matins and liturgy, that's fine. If you can sing matins, but maybe you're too tired to sing liturgy, for me, that's what I had to do for the longest time. Or you can't come to Vespers, but you can always make it to liturgy. That's great. Just let me know. Let me know what works for you. Email or text. If you don't have either of those, please, I will give that to you after we're done. I'm better with text. I see it faster. If you call me, make sure to leave a message. You'll get a very interesting voicemail from me. But I normally don't pick up because it says spam risk whenever an unknown number calls me, and it's not a setting I can change. These smartphones are getting smarter, and so I normally don't pick up because I'm not interested in solar. Thanks. We already have it installed. Anyone have any other questions?
Another thing is, like, if you're first joining the choir, like, knowing what part you're going to sing, you know that my range is alto.
Yes.
But sometimes if you need me to sing something else, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I'm not sure, like, I'll just default to alto.
That's
But if
fine.
there are too many altos, which is usually not the case,
Yes.
it's supposed to be
Okay, thank you for bringing up that point.
Tell me, like, can you sing this instead?
I will. Most of the time I'll just try to take alto myself. I will try to fill in the cracks. I was kind of trained to switch between both as needed, and I fill in the cracks as discreetly as I possibly can. I'll let you know, but this is actually another point. What I really need at this point in time, I need altos and I need basses. And I need them here. I need those people who are those to be here all the time. Because what's nice, it's wonderful to have four-part music, and it's so beautiful, and our repertoire is so beautiful. But what gets difficult is, all it takes is the right combination of people to tell me I can't come, I'm out of town, whatever, and that's fine. People have lives, right? Like, things happen. But at the same time, then all of a sudden, if I don't have an alto section, we can't do Nazo's It Is Truly Me. A lot of the pieces that we have that are four-part, like the Renewed, they have an alto solo. We can't do certain pieces if we don't have the parts to carry them. And I know a lot of people are very fond of our musical repertoire to the point where if I do something a little bit different, people will come and talk to me about it. They have things to say about it, right? They love our music. But what that means is in order to keep doing that, we need enough people on each part. And right now, I have 2 altos. Yes?
I'm willing to become an alto, but I'm, like, really bad.
You're good?
Like, can you do some training?
Absolutely.
I would love to
Absolutely.
be able to fill in that gap.
Yeah. I found it often helps, specifically with the alto section, it helps when you have another alto with you, because then you can help learn. I actually learned with Helen. They taught me all the common chant stuff for soprano, And then they said, okay, now we're gonna teach you alto. And they would have me switch when I was
You
younger.
can do that to us, right?
If you'd like, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah, not during a service. I will practice it with you first, but.
And also, one of the
I'm not
things
one for surprises
we
that
have
way.
done before in the past that we'd like to also continue to do is some of the music is to try to maybe have some, if we can, some of recordings of those sent to you
Mhm.
along with the music. You can also practice it at home, which is a real big help,
Thank you.
if you
Yeah.
really, really can, because that way then it's not like you're having to learn it when you're there trying to do it. It just really is a better way to go, in my experience with choir, ideally. Oh, and then also the other thing I want to say too is also, I can't tell you how incredibly proud I am of this community, but also of this choir. You guys, I've got some of the people and the chanters that are doing prosomias, model hymns, that, you know, quite honestly, 10 years ago in our archdiocese were rarely heard 10 years ago. And so for St. Anthony's to be able to step up the plate to do that, it's helpful because we've got some wonderful people who sat down, you know, and learned them. It's not an easy thing. I heard them for 4 years, so they got kind of drilled into my head in Greek.
Rita Christian, how many prosomia are there
Per mode,
total?
total, hundreds.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
So it's really sweet that we've got for the people here that are chanting, that are striving to be able to do that. I really appreciate that. And that adds an extra layer of beauty to what we're doing.
I will say one more thing about the consecration
Yeah.
and about the archdiocese, unless you wanted to say something. One of the things that I want to do with our repertoire is introduce more archdiocesan standards. And it's not going to be the stuff with the super operatic soprano parts. I'm not going to give us music that we don't have the parts to sing. That doesn't seem fair. Not only that, it probably won't sound very good. But there are some wonderful, wonderful pieces that we don't know. And that way, if you go to church, literally anywhere, at any Antiochian church that has 4 parts, I guarantee you there's at least one piece you will know if you learn certain hymns. I have been singing in PLC choirs long enough that what ends up happening is we'll go to a church and I'm like, okay, I get a weekend off, this will be nice, I'll, you know, suck on a cough drop, rest my voice. The moment that they find out that I know someone in sacred music, they ask me what part I sing and I'm up there. It's not that you have to do that, but the point is, I think it's easy to spend so long worshiping this way that when you're not worshiping while singing, it can feel a little strange. This will at least be able to orient you. You go to any other church, you sing in the PLC choir if you want to, you know the hymns already. And you don't need to know how to sight read them if we learn them here.
And I'd encourage you to be able to do that. We had one of the best PLCs ever done.
People are still talking about
And
it, still.
What St. Anthony's did, I thought the first time they did it years ago, when I just visited it, was phenomenal. But it was just great 2 years ago. But I really hope that creates a momentum and desire that when we have a PLC, the next one's going to be up in Orange County, that
Is
we
it?
all go, higher.
It's in San Jose, then Orange County ends that.
How did I miss that?
2022 in San Jose,
Oh, I've missed that.
2023 in
Okay.
Orange County.
If you can, to be able to go. But
Yeah.
also, think about singing with the choir. It's a great experience, great group of people. And you know what? It's so neat. When I go back to these things, it's like family reunion every time.
Oh, it's
It's just a
wonderful.
great experience.
You'll,
Anyway.
you'll make so many connections simply by showing up.
Right.
Yes, Rita.
Just a quick aside to that as well. If you're interested in learning music that we don't learn here, and they all do, because they use the same music every time to
Yes.
do a PLC, or everything's on our archdiocese's website.
Yes.
It's the same music library.
Are you talking about the stuff just labeled hierarchical or anything?
It'll be labeled convention.
Got
Yeah.
it, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll be looking through all of that. Anybody else have any other questions? Yes, what do you?
Two things. One is, what time are you gonna do this Sunday? Like, will there be time to do a little bit of coffee hour?
Oh, of course. You're gonna need food.
But
Yeah,
what-
of course.
What I'm going to do also, like what we used to do before, choir gets first dibs to come for communion, and if they need to be able to, or how we do it, first dibs to actually go out to eat, you know, so we're trying to work it out so that they can be able to do
Because
that.
you need nourishment. It's not,
Well-
I'm a student full-time. I get it. It's not fair to have you working, and then expect you to go and do more work without eating. Like, if you had this as a job, that would be violation of labor laws.
Right,
We're
right,
not gonna do that to
Right,
you.
right. And the other thing is also, is because we form a ministry team and we get to know one another as persons, we also want to do kind of like what's been our tradition of having just get-togethers where we just come together, not to sing and work on music, but just to be as family, you know, because we're working hard as a ministry. And that way also, when we have a chance to be able to socialize together, when it comes to the practice, then we're focused on the practice rather than trying to catch up on socializing. You know, in the choirs I've been in the past, you know, it's hard because we didn't really get to see one another that much, and so, you know, we're trying to focus on that part. So anyway.
Did you have another question, Hodia?
Kind of, and I came in late, sorry.
That's okay.
But did you, what is your thought or plan for like those who come to this meeting who've never been part of choir before?
I'll talk to them about it further.
Are you just gonna go talk to them one-on-one?
Yes, and we'll work out, I'm gonna exchange contact information with all of you, and we'll work out something that, where both of us can talk, and I can test your range, I can test ability to match pitch, and it's not, I say test, it's not an exam. Either you can match pitch or you can't. Like, it's not, it's, anyway,
And
you'll know.
And one other a quick point also to let you guys know, one of the great, we were so blessed to have this place, mortgage-free. We don't pay anything on that. It's a great blessing. It's becoming a glorious temple, but our facilities are we're really limited. We had hopes to, remember, I just want to let you know, some of the old-timers who know this, because we had talked about tearing into the bathroom, the vestry bathroom, and giving that space. We checked it out again with Subdeacon Charles, Catherine, the people on the building committee, and it's just not practical. It won't sound good. It just won't work because there's 2 steps down there, and it's just going to be weird. So what I am trying to do, and I need your help and support, and I know I'm going to get some pushback on this, but we've had so many people grow, so many people come into the church. We really need to free up some of these side aisles because of the damage to the pews that are happening. We're going to save some money because my goal is to try to remove as many of the side aisle pews as possible, get the ones we need to fix to put them up against the wall that's here, so that we'll still have some up against the wall, but so are our families who want to have their children that standing. We have the space for the people there. All the center section will remain here, although these 2 pews need to really go in the back. They'll just be moved back because we need more solea space because of the sacraments. We're just so tight. But here's the thing. This space is not the ideal space for choir, but this had always been thought as an overflow. It kind of is a space anyway for Ariel to be able to hear and Michelle, but it has kind of been that space. So I'm going to be requesting that anybody that's in here that can't be a distraction to the choir, that they have young kids and stuff like that, that I'm going to try to have them move over to other places so that hopefully that will be as much of an issue and difficulty there. So that I'm telling you, I'm claiming this space for more choir space. I'm just telling you. I wish we could give you the bathroom there. It's just not going to help us.
Here's the
Sorry.
thing, we could, if we're ever short on like a specific part, we can put them in there, turn the mic on, it'll echo, it'll sound good.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions? Any other questions? Like
Any other questions?
one short, sweet thing to share with you, and then we'll let you go.
I'm sorry. Was part of the point of what you were just saying is that like we only have limited space and this whole group's not going to fit up there?
Not necessarily. I think in the past, kind of, the sentiment is similar, but I think what he's saying is we had always planned to have more space, and I think everyone had assumed that we're packed out and we don't have room for more people. I honestly think we can make this particular space work to the point where we won't need more space. We'll see how far people end up overflowing out. I don't know. But I think it's just the point was that the vision was always meant to be whoever wants to sing is welcome to join the ministry. It was never supposed to be this small, select, niche, elite group of of 4 people, right?
That
It's
was
not.
COVID, right?
That's COVID.
Well,
that's COVID.
That's a totally different thing. We're
That's
being
very
obedient to
different.
the Metropolitan and
Very
trying to follow the health guidelines because we didn't know what this was all about.
I remember being when we were all in COVID, I ended up listening to one of our videos from Posca's a while back, and I was like, oh, I miss the sound. It's nice to have a balanced sound with 4 people, and it's very possible. And in fact, I would argue, in many ways, it's easier to achieve a balanced sound with a quartet than it is with a choir of 20 people. But I like the sound
Yeah.
of 20 people so much more.
Yeah.
It's sounds so much better.
Any more questions?
Any more questions? Anybody have any more questions about?
And here's the other possibility that could happen too. If we get more and more people wanting to serve, and I don't want to discourage any young person who wants to serve in the choir, but we might grow to the point where we fill up the choir space that we do have to have teams that serve. So if that ends up happening to happen with the choir, that can be also a possibility, so that that we can end up doing that. We had to do some rotation if we had to, but anyway, yeah.
Or we could have Antiphonal choir.
No, we do anyway, and there's might be a way of actually trying to be able to see how we can do that for some of the other things that happen. Yeah. No, we do for pre-sanctified liturgies, we do for compline, and it's within the tradition of the church, so, yeah. Okay, any other questions? Because I got one last story to quickly share with you.
I just want to say something.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to say thank you to God first and
Yeah.
for St. Anthony who watches over and prays for us. Thank you for the blessing to be here as
Yeah.
one body.
Yeah.
And thank you for being here and praying your prayers because we are one body. And the grace that you effect is for all of us.
Yeah.
So thank you for repenting.
Yeah.
And thank you, Father John. I know you're my husband. And thank you for your leadership, your undying love and prayers, and your flexibility.
Thank
And I say that telling you, I've been in this archdiocese years. I've been in many parishes. We have the blessing under your leadership. I'm saying this as your parishioner. Yes, he's my priest, like he's yours. That we have the blessing that when you see a gift, you put us to work.
Yeah,
You give us a ministry. You have denied nobody.
Yeah.
We are denied nothing here.
Yeah.
We have Christ, we have all of eternity, we have one another. Thank you for encouraging that. And Anastasia, thank you so much for taking this on in the most difficult time and carrying on with all the backlash, all the pressure, and all whatever seeing through us to our people.
Yeah.
Even the body was rent in many ways.
Yeah.
Thank you for carrying on.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that. I need to say that, and I ask for forgiveness.
Thank you, Hoodie. Thank you, Hoodie. We had the hoodiest sermon. Thank you. And I appreciate that.
Yes.
So the last thing I want to be able to share with you is this is one of these. You might have heard this as a different format. This comes from Bishop Basil, but I wanted to be able to share this with you. Once at the monastery of St. George, the abbot was blessed with many wonderful monks, but nobody had very good voices at all. Unfortunately, the worship services were rather hard to hear because people could not really be able to sing so much in tone and in pitch, and so they sang. But when they were going to be able to have, on their feast day of St. George, they decided they were going to invite this incredible, beautiful choir from a cathedral to come, and they'll treat them for the service. And so they asked the monks at that monastery, for this time, just listen to the service. Don't sing, but instead let the choir be able to do what they were going to do. So the choir came in, sang the service. It was glorious. Even the monks who normally would sing along with the service had to admit that it was absolutely glorious. And of course, the abbot was very, very pleased with that. But that night, when the abbot fell asleep, St. George came to him and said, I don't understand. I've taken care of you. I've interceded for you. I've watched out for you. Why didn't you celebrate my feast today? And the abbot was taken back. He says, you don't understand. We brought in the best choir possible to be able to sing of God's glory and your intercession on our behalf. I don't understand. And St. George said, that's very interesting, because today in the church I heard nothing. The scripture says, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. Now, we really want it to be a beautiful noise as well, too. Okay, so that's why if somebody who can't match the pitch is going to sing off key, we're probably not going to have as part of this ministry. There'll be other ministries that can be able to serve. But really, what you do from your heart is really what is pleasing to God. And I thank you for your commitment to stay this long on a Sunday after a long day. I thank you for your years of sacrifice, those who've been here so many years. I think of all the people that's been here, Dr. Julie, you're probably, how many years have you been in the choir ministry? Yeah. So for all of the people who've been in since going way back, for the people who've just joined in, for all of your, and then people who are just interested in wanting to be able to come. This is just, thank you so much for your being a key part of this, and we really appreciate you. So let's stand and bless you guys as you guys go. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, our God is one. Lord, we are thankful for this time. We're thankful for your mercy and grace, the blessing that you've given to us of this home, this family, this temple of this choir director. We thank you for Anastasia and her talents and her desire to serve you, especially through this difficult transition with COVID and everything. We're thankful for the choir members that have been able to serve, and those who haven't been able to serve, and those who are still yet to serve. We're thankful for their desire to worship and praise thee. We're thankful for this community who supports the choir, supports this ministry, and is supported and continues to sing. May in all things we make a joyful noise unto thee, O God. May it be one that is pleasing unto your ears, because it comes from our hearts. May it be one that is edifying to all of the faithful here unto their salvation, and may it be a witness and a form of evangelism to those who want to come and see and know the fullness of God as we know it in the Holy Orthodox Church. We ask this in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you all. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
November 14th, our first choir rehearsal.
Okay.
May
Very
I
good.
say